you open the door at all, even a sliver, that is taken as permission to enter. And so once they get consent, they don't need a warrant. So we recommend people to just not open the door. If they want to have any, you know, if they want to see who it is, hear what they have to say, you can try to like come to a window, ask them to put something under the door, something like that. But really, really recommend people don't open the door. That will. And
is that true for like regular law enforcement?
So for regular law enforcement, they'll have to have a warrant, and typically they will have a more substantial warrant if they're coming to your home.
But the door opening thing?
Yeah, you can ask them to put it under the door.
I mean, if they think I'm engaged in some sort of illegal activity, they come to my door and knock on the door and I open it, does
that need consent? Yes.
Okay, so that's a typical expectation that an open door is considered permission to enter the home.
Yeah.
For anything. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, some individuals and agencies will be more forceful about that. I expect, and I can't speak from experience, but like your general GRPD officer might ask, in addition to seeing an open door, like, do we have permission to enter? And that should generally be the way it goes, but they can, under law, consider an open door of consent, and ICE is more forceful about it, and they will.
Not that I'm engaged in any illegal activity, but I would just like naturally open my door, and I find that a little bit overwhelming, that just opening the door is consent for them to enter my home.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And whether then there's the question of like when they can force their way in without your consent. And with criminal law enforcement, there's a broader array of when they can do that. Usually if they think you're engaging in illegal activity, if they have probable cause to believe that, they might be able to enter regardless of a warrant. But with ICE, they have to have that warrant signed by a judge for them to be able to knock down a door. But we tell people, close your door, and then if they truly have permission, they will knock down your door, which is unfortunate, but it's better than opening the door in most circumstances when they don't have permission to enter. And then talking to this issue about keeping the door closed to all family members, including children. The other thing I wanted to mention about, sometimes they might come and say, we're looking for so-and-so, and they might have that person's name on a piece of paper. And obviously it depends on that person's circumstances or what they want to do, if they're willing, if they want to talk to ICE, if they want to come out, which is gonna be pretty rare, but if that is the case, what we recommend that person do is that person exit the house. I mean, if they're totally alone in the house, okay, that's one thing, but most people are not. They usually have family members who may or may not have immigration status, so we recommend that if they're looking for a particular person, that person does want to engage with them, that person exit the house and engage with them outside of the house, so that the law enforcement doesn't come in and then have access to the whole house and everybody that is in the house, in case somebody else did not want to have a conversation with ICE at that point and potentially be detained. So if they do enter with or without a warrant, at that point, it's kind of something, if they're in your house, you can figure it out later with an attorney whether they had the right to be in there and whether there was anything to do about it. But once they're in there, do not oppose with physical resistance. You can ask for names and identification numbers for the officers and tell them, again, that they did not have permission to enter, that you do not consent for them to be there. You can write down their names and addresses and phone numbers, and any other person also that was a witness to the incident. And you can ask for permission to observe while they are searching, whether it's you or anything in any possessions you have. And if they take anything, to make note of what they've taken.
Can you record that with a phone?
Yeah. Becoming a norm, which is helpful nowadays when there's a video to show what happened. So if you're in your car, typical getting pulled over procedures, if you see you're being asked to be pulled over, stop as soon as possible in a safe place, stay in your car, turn on your interior lights, open the windows, hands on the wheel, show license and registration and insurance if you have them, no false documents, because that can cause issues later on. Everybody, driver and passengers, have the right to remain silent. One thing to note, pretty nuanced, but if somebody has a driver's license from their home country, many countries, there's a treaty that says which countries this is acceptable for, but they can use their foreign driver's license. They have to have a written translation, but it doesn't have to be formal. But they can drive on their foreign driver's license. And because undocumented people in Michigan cannot get Michigan driver's license, their foreign driver's license is a viable legal option. Sometimes the law enforcement does not understand that, and they might still get cited for driving without a license or a Michigan license. But if that ever happens, and you know somebody that happens to, you can have them call us and we can kind of help them advocate, because it's very clear in the law that they were entitled to drive with that license. And there's something that they can just show the judge to make that clear if they have to show up for a driving without a license ticket. But there is a scam out there for international driver's license, and that's not a thing under the law. So if you're talking to people and talking about driving, and because driving without a license is a huge risk. It's one of the biggest reasons people in our area get put in detention in Kent County, is they'll get stopped in the greater Grand Rapids area for driving without a license because they have no access to a driver's license in Michigan, and then they get detained criminally for driving without a license, and then they get put in Kent County, who has a contract with immigration enforcement, and then they get put in, it only takes a few days to resolve a driving without a license ticket or issue, and then they go to immigration detention, and then they're in immigration deportation proceedings because they were driving without a license. I mean, the underlying thing is that they did not have immigration status, but otherwise that's the greatest risk factor for people these days for being detained is driving. And so if you're in conversations with anyone talking about driving and they're undocumented, you can talk about the option of contacting their consulate to see if they offer driver's license. Some do, some don't, and they have different requirements for that. But if their home government is willing to provide them a driver's license, that is a valid license in most cases. But really discourage them from seeking an international license. It's someone taking their money for something that has no validity under the law. And with a car, police cannot search the car without a warrant. They should ask for your consent. And this is one that if you have to get out of the car, just opening the car door to get out does not implicate consent. But they do need your consent to search the vehicle. And if somebody has documents that show they have the right to live in the United States, so a permanent resident card, a visa, a passport, whatever, we recommend those people carry that document or a copy of that document with them always to be able to show that they are entitled to be in the States and that they should not be arrested. Different law enforcement agencies have different practices as to whether they'll arrest someone just for being undocumented. Our local Grand Rapids police say they do not do that, but you'll encounter the arrest for driving without a license often. But there are some jurisdictions that are more hostile, and so if an officer stops someone for whatever reason, but there may be no criminal violation, but they see that the person is driving with or has no immigration status, they can choose to be helpful to ICE and arrest that person for them. And there's a lot of controversy around that, but it does happen occasionally, so we really recommend people, any papers they have to show their status, that they keep them on their person, even if they're not the one driving. On the street, so if law enforcement approaches someone and starts talking to them on the street, they should always ask if they have the right to leave. And if the officer says yes, then they walk away calmly. If they say no, then you are being arrested, and you should be, if it's criminal, you should be read your Miranda rights. If it is immigration, you have the right to kind of ask why they're doing that, what proof they have, and if they're just approaching you at that moment and they're not detaining you, you don't have to talk to them. And if they don't know who you are already, they should have no reason to detain you, even if you don't have immigration status. They should not be able to look at someone and say whether they have immigration status or not. That is not fair. And you can always say you don't wish to talk or you don't wish to be there with them at any point. At work, so if an ICE agent shows up to a workplace, the same right to remain silent applies. We recommend people not give information out about their immigration status or where they were born. They never should say they're an American citizen unless they are. That has very serious consequences, both for their immigration case and some criminal consequences as well. They do not have to line up according to immigration status. That is something that ICE will do. They'll go into a workplace and tell people to line up according to immigration status. They do not have to do that. No one ever has to comply with that, because that is that's a violation of their right to remain silent by physically putting their body and saying something and by their physical location. At work, the same thing as if you're encountered, someone in the street, you can ask whether you have the right to go, and you can ask to be let go, but no running, and they may chase after you. And we have unfortunately seen instances of force being used by immigration officials that resulted in significant harm or death with instances of flight. So we really recommend people not flee. But we also recommend people do not sign any paperwork that they don't understand. But in general, the best thing is to not sign things until they've had a chance to consult with an attorney. So after somebody is detained, so if you're encountering that person on the street and they say, nope, you don't have the right to leave, if they say that anywhere, if it's the more obvious detention, you're being put in handcuffs, put in a law enforcement vehicle, but you have the right to remain silent. So it's a right that all people enjoy under the Fifth Amendment. There are some cards, and I apologize I didn't bring any today, but we can get you guys some that you can share, that you can keep in your wallet. It's like the size of a business card that says what their rights are. It says if they're choosing to exercise their rights. It's in English and Spanish, so that when they're silent, it's clear that they're choosing to be silent to exercise their Fifth Amendment right, as opposed to just being obstinate or something along those lines. And you have the right to consult or contact an immigration attorney, and we recommend people do that immediately.
Does that Fifth Amendment right even apply to those who are immigrants?
Mm-hmm.
If they're not legal immigrants?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a right against self-incrimination for everybody. So any conversation with law enforcement, you don't have to talk, because you don't know what they're going to do with the information you give them. So that's fine in this context.
Do you have this phase 1, 2, and 3 in like a really nice handout to give to clients?
Phase of yes.
The before, during, and after?
And and I apologize, I was kind of scattered when I left on Friday. We have these booklets. They're called Prepare Your Family Guides, and they go through this, and they also have some forms at the end. So I will connect with Janelle, and I can get those to you tomorrow or something, so that she can distribute those. But
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, and those we have them in English and Spanish. We have Arabic as well. I don't know that I have any in the office right now, but if you guys need Arabic, and I think there's one other language we're translating them into, we can get those to you guys. Yeah, but it's helpful to have it in those contexts too. So, again, they don't have to answer any questions about their citizenship or where they were born or manner in which they entered. Again, no signing before talking to an immigration attorney. Typically someone has the right to talk to an attorney. They have a right to go before a judge before a decision is made in their immigration case. But there is something that can be signed where they agree to be deported voluntarily in a quick manner. And so we really don't want people signing those papers unless that is truly what they want. But most people, they can stay for a while longer, fight their case, and some people might have some option to say, some may not, but we want them to at least be informed about that before they sign it. And you can obtain the name, agency, ID number, and telephone of the officer detaining you, and you have the right to ask for that information. And we tell people to ask for a bond as soon as they get in immigration detention. So, and this happens in the criminal context too, where there's bond, but it's not as much a matter of asking for it. They just assign you bond or not. In the criminal context, in immigration, you have to ask for it. There's a form that again, not signing forms, but this is a form that, they can wait till they talk to an attorney, or they can indicate they do want to see a judge, and they do want to have bond assigned to them. Immigration and Customs Enforcement can give them bond, But in our area, the practice is that if you've already been detained, you're going to usually not be released on bond from Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It has to be bond that the judge assigns to you. So you stay in detention for a few weeks, end up before the immigration judge, who's in Detroit, and you actually go via televideo from the detention center. And the judge will assign you a bond, and it's not like criminal bond in that, like, criminal usually only pay a portion of it, like 10%. For immigration bond, you have to pay the whole thing. And typical amounts are $5,000 to $10,000. And it has to be paid by a U.S. citizen. The money can come from anywhere, but someone has to put their name down as a guarantor. And that allows them to be released while they continue to go through the immigration process, continue to go through hearings. And if they are not released, then they stay detained in jail. So they have a right to an attorney, and attorneys can come visit them in jail. Phone. One thing that is very difficult in the jail systems here in Michigan is phone contact. So they can have phone calls, but they have to either do it collect, so the person receiving the call has to pay for it, or the actual person detained has to have money on their account to be able to make phone calls. And so that can be a barrier. So attorneys will often go in person, so they don't have to use that phone system. They used to be you could visit in person at Calhoun 1 day a week, depending on the last name of the person detained, and they get assigned by last name to the day, and you could have like a half-hour in-person visit with a glass in between you. They just switched that to video visits. I've not done it, so I don't know all the details. They've just switched it in the last few months. So at this point, you have to only have the right to visit your family members or friends via video. But the phone calls are still an option. So if somebody you know is detained, thinking of money, not only for bond, but also money to give them so that they can be making phone calls or have money on an account yourself so that they can call you. They also have the right to contact their embassy or consulate. And that's a good place to start for someone who doesn't, maybe hasn't already contacted an attorney and wants to talk through some of their options. Their embassies and consulate are there to help their citizens. And you have the right to know why you've been arrested. So in detention, if somebody is scared to return to their home country, it's extremely important that they tell that to the officer, because then that kind of puts them in a different process where they're starting to at least have some interviews and for asylum and look at that option. It's really important that they don't make any deals or sign any papers without understanding the consequence. Something that we've seen is very unfortunate that was happening with the family separation contacts at the border, was that a lot of parents were, whether they were hearing this directly from immigration officers or the kind of rumor mill at the detention facilities, they were under the impression that they would reunite with their children quicker if they signed deportation orders. So we had a number of people who were trying to figure out now what to do with them because they signed these orders, which maybe they would have had a right to fight their case and stay, but they did it under that impression that, well, if I give up my right to stay, then I'll get my child back, which is a horrendous thing that is happening and hopefully being resolved as we speak in the courts. There's a system to find detainees online, so it's a ICE locator, so that's the URL. You can also do it by phone, and I think on the phone you have to use their A number. On the website you can try their name, but again, like I said, with issues in spelling, issues even with like two last names for Latin Americans, they may or may not hyphenate them, they may or may not put both of them. So names is not the best way to go, but you can try it if you don't have an A number, but A number is the way to go there. So according to federal guidance, a person should be released from local law enforcement, so criminal law enforcement, within 48 hours after paying a bond or being allowed to go. And that does apply to ICE, but there's really not any issues once they've paid the bond with ICE. If they're detained longer, they can contact an attorney right away to be released. It's unlawful to be detained longer than 48 hours after being released. And the issue where this comes up is if somebody is there's something called a detainer, that ICE has these agreements with local jails that they'll hold the person while ICE comes and picks them up, even after the person's criminal process has ended or they've paid the bail to get out. And so that right exists for only 48 hours. So if you're in Kent County Jail and you're being released, ICE can come pick you up for 48 hours and